everyone, it's Lisa. Today on DoodleDrawArt, it's Watercolor Wednesday, and I'm going to show you how to make this Valentine's Day card. To get started, we're going to make a wash on our paper. So what I've done is I've set out my watercolor paper, and I've just taped it down, and I've left an equal amount of border all the way around the edges so that I'll have a white edge when I'm finished. And I've got some water here, and I'm wetting my paint. So I'm going to be working with very thin paint, lots of water in the paint, and actually lots of water on the paper as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with this orangey red, and I'm just going to paint it down the side of my page and around the edges. And as you can see, it's a very light, thin color. And I'm going to add more water and just wash the whole page with this light red. Okay, so it's nice and wet right now, which is great. And while it's still wet, I can grab a little bit more color and just dab it in the corners and around the edges. And this is going to form a bit of a bleed. So what it's doing is it's taking the paint is going where the water is. So anywhere that there's water, this paint will run into those areas of the paper. So as you can see here, there's a little bit of a ripple, and it's just giving a little bit more color, and the way it's bleeding along is going to give it some interesting texture. So what we need to do now is wait for this to dry, because the next step is to add some layers. Okay, so now that my first layer is dry, I'm going to work with some very watered down paint, and the first paint I was using was more orange than red, but now I'm switching over to red. But as you can see, I'm using, it's this red, but it's so diluted that it's very, very thin. What I'm going to do is I'm going to paint hearts on this background, add a little bit more color, and then I'll just dab in. So watercolors are great. They always will travel wherever the water is. So if you paint on your canvas, on your paper, the shape you want, and right now you can't see it, but I can see that it's wet, and I've got the shape perfectly carved out on the page, and then when I add paint to it, it's only going to go where I've placed the water, because I have waited until my paper was dry to add this next layer. So I'm just painting hearts all over this background. This layer is very light, and the reason for that is that it's easiest to work with watercolors going from light to dark, because the light colors won't sit over the darker ones. We wouldn't see them. So we're going to work at these lightest ones at the very back layer, and then we're going to build up more color in each progressive layer. Okay, so now I'm going to let this dry, and then I'll come back and do the next layer. Alright, so my last layer is dry, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a more saturated layer of red. So I'm just using the same red, but now less water. So I'm adding more pigment into my paint, and I'm going to do the same thing that I just did. So I'm going to go back through and paint hearts, but this time I'm going to overlap the layer that I did before. So I'm going to paint a bigger heart, and I'm going to paint it right here over top of my dry ones, just like this. And I'm just going to pull points down and fill and do another. So I'm just adding a slightly darker layer on top while this is still wet. The hearts that I just painted, just to give even more varied color texture to these red hearts that I've just painted, because these ones, as you can see, are now closer to the surface. All right, and so then we're going to let it dry again. All right, so I'm gonna let this dry and then I'm gonna come back and show you the next step. Okay, so my previous layer is dry now, and I'm going to do my next layer. And what I've done is I've taken my red and I've mixed just a tiny bit of blue with it, just to cool down this red color a little bit and give it a little punch of more tint. So this is less watered down, and I'm just going to put a great big heart over the center of all of these floating hearts. So I'm just going to start it right here, and I'm going to place it right in the center of my page. This is the main event, the big heart. And then I'm going to fill all of this. And as you can see, even though I'm painting over the hearts that I've already placed, you can still see them through the new layer. That's the really cool thing about watercolors, is that once they're painted on, they're kind of permanent, even though they're painted with water. I can't really unpaint it once it's on here. So now, just to give this a little bit of extra fun value, I'm just going to add a little bit more blue to my red, and I'm going to water it down a little more, and I'm going to have some fun with this now, adding some splatters onto my page. So all you need to do to do splatters is to load some paint on your brush and then just flick it in various ways onto your painting. So just flicking, tapping, whatever you'd like to call it. You can put as many or as few as you like. Okay, time to let it dry. All right, so we're getting somewhere, but it doesn't look like much yet. But just wait until you see this next step. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use a liner brush, a fine liner brush, and I've just got a little tiny pot of calligraphy ink. And you could use a Sharpie to do this, but it's kind of fun to stick with brushes for this whole project. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to outline this large heart with my liner brush loaded with a little bit of calligraphy ink. So here I go. I'm just going to trace a nice round edge on this heart. So as you can see, this is really going to make it pop. And then we can choose some hearts behind to continue doing the same effect with. I'm going to try to make my line a little bit thinner as I do hearts that are further away, but I'm going to choose them to not overlap. So to start off with, I'll do this one here and just lightly around the edge. And when I get to my main heart here, I'm going to stop because they're not on the same layer. So I've got lots of ink here. I'm just going to pick up some of it to do this one behind. So I'm just using less pressure to make a finer line on this heart that's in the background, further away. And if you like, you can give your hearts a little bit more dimension by just pulling this one line a little bit beyond the corner. It just gives it a little bit of a chubby look. Okay, I'm going to continue my way around. I'm going to try not to get my hand in the ink. All right, so one last thing is to add some shading. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make lines that come straight out from the edge. These ones are a little more thin than my original lines, but this is going to add an edge of shading to my heart, and I can even add some lines that curve this way to add extra shading along here. And I'm going to do this along all of these little background hearts as well, just tiny little lines. So yeah, I'd like to know some questions or comments that you have about my watercolor art today. You can tell me if you have done some watercolors yourself, or if these are any new techniques for you. I often do tutorial videos on how to draw things kids want to draw or people want to draw, but it's sometimes fun to just work in a new medium like watercolors. So, you know, if you don't have some watercolor paints already, you could pick some up and give it a try. You can really even do this with just cheap watercolors that you get in a pan for children to paint with, a Crayola or any brand really. I was using tube paints today, but you can do it any way you like. All right, so this is it. The heart is done. It's up to you if it's done here or not. You could just leave it like this, or if you want, you could shoot an arrow right through the center of this heart, and I think that that's what I'm going to do. So here I go. The arrow shooting through the heart. So straight piece coming through here, and then exiting over here, big long arrow through the heart. Nice pointy end on the arrow. Fill it in. And at the other end, it's going to come out back here, just like this. All right, so you can use this as a lovely Valentine's card on Valentine's Day. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Please comment below, click like if you liked watching this video, and subscribe to DoodleDrawArt for more great and awesome art and drawing ideas.